here today with my longtime friend, Crystal Munoz, who I met while I was in prison. Her case actually became one of the foundational cases of the First Step Act for not having the ability anymore to shackle a woman during childbirth. Crystal's story is not only of an unjust sentence that she received, but it was totally, totally terrible actions that were taken against a woman who had not committed the crime that they accused her of. And it would take her many years of fighting for her freedom before she'd ever be reunited with her children. Crystal, I know this is a difficult story for you to tell, but can you just start at the beginning, how you got caught up in this?
So I grew up in Arizona on the Navajo Reservation, which is like one of the biggest, it is the biggest reservation in the United States. You're kind of in the middle of nowhere. You don't really have much opportunity, job opportunity, education opportunity. It's similar to a third world country because a majority of the Native Americans, they haul their water, they haul wood because there's no electricity and no running water. They still have not did infrastructure for that even to this day. A lot of families have dirt floors. It has a wood stove in the middle of their home where they cook. That was normal for me growing up. That's the way that everyone around me lived. My grandpa, he was a judge, a federal judge for the Navajo Nation. He was a judge since I was a baby. He used to take me and he would ask me, "Would you please come?" I was getting in trouble and he would try to keep me out of trouble.
Because there was nothing there to do.
Mm-mm.
Crystal, one thing I find just so terrible in how many years you lost with your daughters is the thing that you were sentenced for, a marijuana conspiracy. And marijuana is now a $1 billion industry. And you lost all of that time from your daughters, from your husband, from their most formative years for something that is now legal.
Yeah. It was in 2005, around 2005. Um, I wrecked my car. My grandmother, she co-signed for that car for me. And I did not insure it. So I hid that from my grandmother because I did not want to disappoint her. And I tried to do it on my own and get it repaired. There was a mutual friend of my husband and mine that we went to high school with. He offered to help fix my car, and it wouldn't cost me much to get it fixed. The people who would fix it were from Mexico. That's how all of this began.
You live pretty close to the U.S. Mexican border, right?
Correct. Odessa is not very far from the Mexico border. It's about 2 hours from El Paso, Texas, and maybe an hour and a half from Lajitas, which many people don't know where that is, but it's right on the border of Mexico and Texas.
This friend who offered you the ability to get your car repaired at a cheaper rate was in Mexico, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I did. I took it there and I went alone. I did not tell my family because I just didn't want them to worry. I knew they would try to convince me not to go, so I didn't tell anybody. And I went alone and I left my car there and they allowed me to drive a very old truck back. And I kept going back and forth to try to get my car, and every time I would go, I would never see my car, but I was told that it was being repaired. I struggled trying to get it back before my grandparents could find out, and my husband.
Because your husband at that time, he was incarcerated.
He was.
And you were waiting for him to come home also.
He had been incarcerated for about 8 years at that time.
And so now at the time that he's getting ready to come home, you've got this new car. Your grandmother has co-signed for it. You wrecked it. You're in a panic, and you take the advice to have someone in Mexico fix your car. Okay, and then what happened, Crystal?
So they asked that I would do a favor in return. I wasn't going to get paid for it, but of course they were fixing my car. And so I did question them and ask them, why did they need me to um, draw a map of a ranch road? They told me that they paid the owners of that ranch $30,000 to utilize their road. They didn't follow through with their side of the bargain and helping them, assist them go through there. They wanted to know how to navigate it. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, maybe they're going to go into the ranch, take $30,000 worth of cattle or something, or get their money back somehow. I didn't know. I mean, in the time when I was actually doing it, I was so naive that I didn't even realize I was in Mexico when I was traveling through the dirt roads and the back roads to get to the ranch, because there's a lot of ranches in that area, campers and wildlife, and a lot of illegal immigrants go through that area.
And you just drew it on a piece of notebook paper.
Piece of notebook paper, ripped it out of a spiral notebook paper, drew two lines to show that that was the main road, the main highway. A square with a check and a point, because there was a checkpoint. It was not a border crossing. It was a checkpoint in the Big Bend National Park.
Okay.
And right before you get to that checkpoint, maybe about 2 miles before, there's a ranch road that you can get off of. And it goes like a horseshoe around that checkpoint. So my map was literally just 2 lines for the road, an arrow and that went around this little square back onto that road, and that was my map.
That does not sound like a sophisticated map.
It was not.
Oh, wow. So then what happened?
So I took it to somebody in Midland. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know their name. I was instructed where to meet them, and it was at a house. It was at a residential area, and the people came out. It was 2 males, and I gave it to them, and I left.
Okay. So you kept going through this whole saga trying to get your car back. So finally, when your husband came, you still hadn't gotten your car back.
No.
So you had to go and come clean with him.
Yes.
And what was his reaction?
He was disappointed. He was afraid, like, for me.
Because he knew that was probably dangerous.
Yes, he did. He knew. He had just come from prison.
Their plan was not to recoup their $30,000. Their plan was really to know how to navigate through that road.
Yes.
To do other illegal activities.
Yes.
So it was not about that. So what happened to tie you into drug dealing when it was never about drug dealing? Because, Crystal, I know we've talked about this many times. No one ever gave you one dime for drugs.
No.
No one paid you for that very simple map. I'm going to say stick figure map.
Right.
And after all of this happened and you got your car back, how long was it before agents showed up at your house?
I want to say months, just a few months.
And when the agents first came to your house, you gotta tell everyone what happened when they showed up.
Okay, so I was about 2 months pregnant with our second daughter, and I had just given birth to our first daughter. She was about 6 months old. They came to our door and they asked if I would be willing to go and help them with some information that they felt that I might have to help them out. They promised that I was not in trouble, not to worry. It didn't have anything to do with me. They just hoped that maybe I could help them out with some information. And I invited them into my home. They didn't want to come into my home. They wanted me to go with them. So I asked if I could bring my baby, and they said no. They would prefer that I leave her if I could find someone to watch her. My sister-in-law was there. She watched her.
And you were a nursing mother.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
And so my husband, of course, he told them, well, I'm going to go. I'm going to go with her. They said, you can come, but can you follow in your own vehicle, and she'll come with us. And they took me to the police station. They took me to the very top of the police station. And my husband went through the front entrance. So he got stuck down there, and they kept him down there until they were done interrogating me. And I found out later he was very upset with the people down there because they were giving him a hard time and not allowing him to go up with me. I was in an interrogation room with about 6 DEA, FBI. I believe there was like a Texas Ranger, maybe a U.S. Marshal. You know, they had badges, they had guns. Had a person just in a regular clothing come in, real nice, cordial person, and just say, you know, can you sign this just saying you're agreeing to talk to us? And I took it to read it, and they said, well, you know, it's just saying you're just agree to talk to us. That was my Miranda rights that I signed
So
off.
they trick you into signing
They
your
didn't
Miranda rights.
they didn't cite the Miranda rights to me. They didn't read them to me. But that was what I did. I signed my Miranda rights. They proceeded to interrogate me. They had a book of people, and they wanted to know if I knew any of them, if they looked familiar, and I didn't know any of them personally. In that book, there was a couple, maybe two faces that I had seen before, but I didn't know them personally. They had me initial my name beside it, and I wasn't giving them any information that they wanted from me because I didn't have that type of information that they wanted from me. I was willing to take them to Mexico. I was willing to take them to the home that I stayed in. I was willing to take them where they kept my car, but they didn't want to go there. They insisted that I was to give them somebody from the United States that was connected. But people don't realize that if that's what it takes to get a lesser sentence, then you're taking the chance of dealing with these type of people that will kill your family, that will kill you, you know, and so you really don't have no other option but to just face your situation and deal
But the
with it.
people that you would have given them had nothing to do with your case. I mean, they weren't the ones that were bringing drugs in through that road. You could have given them some names, but as you say, that fear, how are you going to put your family in that kind of jeopardy when you, first of all, you're not selling drugs yourself. You have nothing to do with drugs. Yet they want you to randomly just give them some names of people that will put you and your family's life in jeopardy.
Yeah, my husband, he told me and I shared with my husband information that I was grasping for to share with them, and he told me, don't do that. Don't do that.
Because it's wrong. It's wrong when they try to force you to do something wrong to get a lesser sentence. Crystal, I understand how that goes too. I understand exactly what they do. Like you going into the system, I was ignorant of how our justice system works, how it works when you're arrested, and they try to get you to give up names of people, and you're so afraid. You're trying to think, what can I give them? But I know looking back, you held on to your integrity, and that's what is very important to me. And I know it's important to you. You're not going to do the same thing to someone else that they did to you. That's what they did to you. That's what they did to me. So after you wouldn't give them any names because you didn't have any names, they showed you some maps.
And they were not maps that I drew personally.
So these
It was
are
about 3 of them. What they would keep saying was that I was a missing piece of their puzzle, and if I didn't give them that piece, that I wouldn't see my kids for a very long time.
Crystal, when I was reading over your case, I really believe that yours was a case of maybe even mistaken identity.
Correct.
Weren't they calling you by another name?
They were. In my indictment, it kept referring to me as AKA and it's on my indictment, La Mora. I've never been called that in my name in my whole life. And they also had a description of my car having like a white Playboy bunny on it. And I don't like Playboy bunny, nothing. And I would never put that on my car or wear it or anything like that. So I knew they were obviously mistaking me for somebody else. I just had no way of proving it other than I did explain to my lawyer if they could investigate my vehicle, my actual vehicle, but he just said no, that's not gonna do nothing.
Did you ever ask your attorney to put anyone on the stand who could defend your innocence?
My brother,
And they wouldn't do it.
they wouldn't do it.
I'm telling you, Crystal. And the bad thing about it is your case is not that unique.
No.
We found that out once we were in prison with other women who were used as pawns, and when they wouldn't agree, they threw the book at them. Some of the women pleaded guilty to things they weren't even guilty of because they were afraid. And that fear is what they used to get convictions. How much time did your attorney tell you you were facing?
My indictment had a mandatory minimum of 10 years, which means that you're automatically going to start at a 10-year sentence. And in the federal system, they go by a point system. And they'll add points to your sentencing just depending on what they can come up with, because they gave me a point for drawing the map, which I found out later by studying the law that the indictment has to prove the element of the crime you're being charged with. The elements of my crime were an agreement to possess and distribute marijuana, cocaine, and crack cocaine. They never proved any of those elements that I even agreed or even possessed. They said I constructively possessed marijuana and had control over it just by drawing a map. I had constructive possession over it. I would have the ability to say where it goes or what is done with it because of my involvement in knowing that route.
Did they ever give you a plea offer?
No, they refused.
Crystal, that's insane. Never sold marijuana. They knew you didn't sell marijuana.
I had no idea what a conspiracy law was or a mandatory minimum law. I had to learn that on my own.
Now, once you made your decision to go to trial, how long did your trial last?
2 days.
Your trial was a 2-day trial. They came back with conspiracy, correct? And a marijuana charge.
Yes.
And sentenced you to how much time?
20 years. Well, 235 months, which is 19 years, 10 months.
We're going to say 20 years. That's too close to 20 years not to be, because I know you're the mother of 3. You had a son that was, I won't go, I know that's very hard for you, but he was at the age of 5, was it?
He was 5.
He was 5. He was at a daycare.
He was at school. It was a private school.
And he choked on something that was lodged in his throat. So you had lost your son. Your 2-day trial was over. You left a 10-month-old baby at home, and you were pregnant. I want you to tell us about your experience of being pregnant in prison.
Well, they held